So like I said, my name is Brandon Grant. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here at QuoteWerks, and we're going to be discussing and demonstrating the new features we released in version 5.6 Build 1. There's quite a few new features to cover today, but kind of an overview for the day. We're going to do a short PowerPoint presentation, just a few slides, kind of introduce you to some of the new features that we have released. And then we'll actually do a live demonstration of these new features because I know there's quite a few in there that a lot of you have been asking for probably years up to this point. So, and then at the end of the session today, we'll take some questions. You'll notice in that go to webinar box, there is the option to post questions. So if you do have a question that about a specific feature or about just QuoteWerks in general, feel free to post your question in there. I am going to come back to your questions at the end of the meeting today. So if I don't stop and answer your question immediately, don't worry, I will circle back at the end and get through as many of those as we can. However, if you do need additional support, definitely feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We'll be happy to answer any questions for you. If you want to post your contact information in the questions box, if you don't want to hang around to the end to get back to that, just post your information in there and we'll circle back to you as well. So to kind of review version 5.6 build 1, we released 33 new features, 29 fixes, and 6 miscellaneous features. The miscellaneous features are typically just kind of like smaller features that we kind of added one off that maybe wasn't requested, but it had to do with something else that we were working on. So we went ahead and implemented it as well. So the biggest one for this release is always going to be the integration updates. So if you are running Maximizer CRM 2020.R2 or R2 or ConnectWise 2020.3, you'll want to be on the latest version of QuoteWerks for those. There was beta support in earlier releases, but unless you're on version 5.5 build 6, just go ahead and update the latest one that has full support for those. Additionally, we have added MS CRM OAuth 2 support. So if you're connecting MS CRM through OAuth, that's been added. Same thing, if you haven't upgraded since QuickBooks 2021 came out, you want to upgrade as well because we do support that for the US, Canada, UK, all the supported locations. And then same thing, Sugar CRM 10.2, all those are supported in the latest release. So biggest feature probably for everyone here, or at least a lot of you, are going to be the access rights for the cover pages, layouts, and literature. This is a really great feature because this is going to allow you to specify who in your organization is able to view cover pages, layouts, and your literature files in that deliver window. So I'm going to walk you through that entire process today. Very, very easy to use and very, very useful. So if you have multiple business units where some of your sales reps only sell to or only sell under one company name and another rep sells under a different company name, this will be really useful. If you have reps who don't need to see a specific type of layout, you'll be able to hide those. It's just going to provide a lot of flexibility for you. So we'll make sure to walk through all that today. You'll be able to control those access rights by specific user, or if you're utilizing groups in QuoteWerks, you'll be able to specify it by groups as well. And it really just kind of helps simplify that deliver window for you so that you're not having a whole list of layouts. When I show you mine here in a minute, this is my training installation, so I do have quite a few layouts. So you'll actually be able to see kind of what it looks like when it's all cleaned up and just really easy to use. There's written instructions on how to use this in chapter 16 of the help file under user maintenance and security. So check that out if you would want kind of a step-by-step process in the help file that's available there. In addition to the access rights for your layouts in that deliver window, we also added the ability to show hide the grid toolbar icons. So for a lot of you that may not be familiar with the grid toolbar icon, it's that toolbar that is directly above the line items on the document items tab. So it has those little icons on there. That's a really great place to look at some different features that are available in QuoteWerks. They're essentially shortcuts, but you were never able to customize which ones were visible and which ones weren't. So if you had a couple of those that maybe you weren't using, they would still show up there. So now you can actually control that, and that's on a per user setting also. So we'll walk through how to set those up as well. Again, very, very easy. It's one of the really nice things about this release is there's not a lot of setup involved for this, just some minor settings, and you'll be able to specify on a per user basis for these. For those of you that are using Eatalize, which is quite a few of you here, we added a ton of new functionality. We now have a public favorites folder. So if you're not familiar with that, there's always been a my favorites for the last couple of years where you could save items that you quote out on a regular basis instead of having to do the search each time. Well, now with the public favorites, and that was limited to your specific logged in user. So if you spent a couple hours putting this item list together, you would have to go to each user to add that. Well, now we have a public favorites folder where you can actually share items with other users and you can store them there. In addition to that, we added folders and subfolder support. So you could actually build out kind of like a product catalog in Eatalize with various folders and subfolders. So there's a lot of functionality there. And again, really, really easy to use. So I'll show you how to set that up. And then finally, we added the workspace for the desktop. So for those of you that are using QuoteWerks Web and have Eatalize, you've probably seen the workspace. Workspace is kind of like a temporary holding area for items. So if you are kind of researching items, maybe an item you're selling is being discontinued, and you're researching items, you can save them in the workspace without having to add them to the favorites and just kind of compare them across each other and maybe hold them there. Maybe you're going to quote them out a couple times and see which ones your customers like best before you add them to like your favorites and your public favorites and your my favorites now. So there's just some added flexibility with that where you don't have to do a search each time you want to find that item. You can put it there in the workspace kind of as a temporary holding spot for it. And then when you're ready to start selling it, you can move it to a favorites folder, or you can just remove it from the workspace if you're not going to use it. So we'll cover how to set that up as well. Again, very, very easy. And you can find more information about that functionality in Chapter 11 of the QuoteWerks help file under the product content subscription. Re-export purchase orders. This is for anyone that is using QuickBooks Sage 50 US Edition, Autotask or ConnectWise for purchase orders. When you export a PO from QuoteWerks to those systems, typically you'd only be able to do it once. Now, if you need to make a change or something wasn't correct and you want to re-export it over to those systems, you'll be able to do that. It's simply just a right click in that menu option to do that. So very, very easy. There's some instructions in Chapter 19 on the purchase orders tabs about that, but in each of those, in Chapter 9 for each of these integrations, you can also check out the screenshots and how it works. But very, very easy to use. There's not really too much to it, but it's just a nice feature to be able to kind of simplify that when you need to re-export those POs. And for our QuoteWerks Web users, the Sync Links tab with QuoteWerks Web, and also the sync from the Deliver window. Basically, what this will allow you to do is any document links that have been added in QuoteWerks Web onto the Links tab in QuoteWerks Desktop, you can actually sync those down into the installation now. So you'll actually be able to sync documents up and down from QuoteWerks Desktop a little more easy. Or a little easier than you had been before. Before you would have to go to like Tools, Options, QuoteWerks Web, Synchronize, Sync Up. Now you'll actually be able to sync up from the Links tab in QuoteWerks Desktop or the Deliver window, which I'll show you. And then this also allows you to sync down from QuoteWerks Web as well. So if you added something on the Links tab in QuoteWerks Web, you can now pull that into the installation in QuoteWerks Desktop. So we'll walk through that today as well. Again, very, very easy. Okay, tech data quote importer. So we've had the tech data quote importer for quite a while now, but we have added some new functionality. So tech data is actually rolling out a new version of their quote importer. That's going to be the JSON support in the USA only right now. I think they're going to expand that to Canada shortly. But basically, this will allow you to pull in tech data quotes that start with a 4 or a 1, either one. Where before you could only pull in the ones that begin, I believe that begin with the 4. I don't think they could pull in the ones with the 1. So this will support both. Additionally, if you are using CCW quotes from Cisco, you'll be able to link your tech data account with with your CCW account, and you'll actually be able to pull in those CCW quotes directly through here. So I'll show you where that is. There is some setup that's going to be involved for that, so you're going to want to make sure you follow up with those instructions in the QuoteWerks help file in the tech data setup. As far as using the feature, just check out Chapter 4 in the QuoteWerks help file. Oh, and I already see a question. Actually, there's 2 back-to-back questions. do you need Eatalize for the tech data quote importer? You do not. You have to have the real-time module, but you don't have to have Eatalize for the quote importer functionality. That's built into the real-time module. Synnex quote importers. So we've added support for the Synnex quote importer. This is good for USA and Canada. You'll be able to search for quotes by the quote number. One thing really cool about this integration is it's automatically available. So if you already have your Synnex account set up with them and you're integrated with QuoteWerks and Synnex, next time you update QuoteWerks, you'll actually see on the grid toolbar the little Synnex logo, and you'll be able to click on that, and then you can just type in your quote number and pull it in QuoteWerks. It's really, really simple. So that's available for you as well, and that one does not require any setup, so that's really nice. As always, if you have questions, definitely let us know. Feel free to give us a call, send us an email. If you have questions during this webinar that you'd like answered, go ahead and post those in the questions box, and I'll make sure that we circle back to that. If you're not following us on social media, make sure you do. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all those. Make sure you're following us. We do post updates, new features, new videos, anything that's going on with the company, we'll post in there and just kind of keep everyone updated. So make sure you're following us there. And as always, we do have a ton of resource available for you. So if you want to try something out, if you're interested in getting a trial of Quote Valet, or you want to try Eatalize, anything like that, definitely let us know. We're more than happy to set up some free trials for you and answer any questions along the way. Okay, so let's go ahead and click over to QuoteWerks and let's kind of walk through the demonstration here. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about are the access rights. So if we click on our deliver window here in QuoteWerks, you'll see I have a ton of layouts. This is my training installation, so I have all sorts of different layouts. I have a various literature documentation, I have various cover pages, all that. So I don't really need all these files. These are just kind of legacy files for the most part for a lot of them. So what you can do now in QuoteWerks is you can specify which users have access to which files. So the first thing you need to do is when you're logged in QuoteWerks as the administrator or someone with master rights, click on Tools, Options, and then click on the Security tab. You should see it kind of in the middle there, the Security tab, and you'll see there's a checkbox that says Enable Individual Resource Security. So you want to go ahead and check that. Now, when you check that, you're going to receive this pop-up. This pop-up is telling you that essentially when you enable this feature, all of your cover pages, literature, and layout files are going to be hidden because they do not have access rights assigned to them yet. So don't be alarmed. First time you enable this and you click OK, so if we click OK here and then click OK, it's going to save our options. When we go to the deliver window, it's actually going to essentially hide all of those files because they don't have access rights associated with them. So they're not deleted. They're still existing in the QuoteWerks installation. They're just not going to be visible. So we'll click on deliver, and this will open up our deliver window. And you'll see here all my layouts are no longer visible. My cover pages, same thing. My literature files, same thing. So there's a couple things we want to point out before we start adding access rights. You'll see at the top left, there's a little red dot here. This is just a visual indicator that the resource security has been enabled. That's it. That's all that means. That just lets you know that, hey, that's been enabled. It's useful for support too, so that we can ask you that. So if they say, is there a red dot on your deliver window? That's what they're talking about right there. So that's all it's telling you. Next, we want to do is we want to enter administration mode. So you'll see there's a new checkbox in here. And if we click on administration mode, now we'll see all of our layouts. I'm going to take a moment just to load all my layouts since I have quite a few. So you'll see it'll list all my layouts here, and they're all in red. And that's just simply telling you that no access rights have been assigned to these layouts. So my first layout here, this is the one I use most often. I want to go ahead and make sure that everyone has access to that. So what I'm going to do is simply select it, and then you just right click, and there's an option for set access rights. And you can see, we'll go back to that here in just a moment, that you can actually do multiple at a time. So here I can say, okay, I want all my users to have the ability to view and or modify. So if you give someone the ability to modify, they automatically have view rights because they obviously need to be able to see it to make changes to it. But you can give just view where they don't have access to modify. If you click on the drop down up here, we can actually select all view, or select all modify. For me, I'm just going to do select all view because this is the file, this is the main layout for our installation. Everybody's going to use this. So we'll go ahead and we'll select that. And then maybe I want to give like our executives and our sales managers and the administrator the ability to modify it because they're kind of administering QuoteWerks. So we'll give them that option, and then we'll click OK. And you'll see now, once this loads, we actually have a numerical number. We have a number next to our layout, and that tells you how many users or groups have access to it. So there's 20 users and groups that have access to this document. If we go back in here and go to set access rights, and we remove some people, so we'll remove our inactive users here and click OK. You'll see that number changes. So it's going to update every time you make a change. And if we exit administration mode, it'll again hide all of our layouts, and it's only going to show the one layout that have access rights to it. So let's go back into administration mode. So now for a lot of you, you have multiple layouts that you use on a regular basis. So in that case, what you can do is go through and select the ones that are important to you. And if you hold Control on your keyboard, you can actually select multiple layouts at once, and then just simply right click, set access rights. And all that message was saying is that when you do this, the rights you have, the rights that you're setting here is going to apply to all of the selections. So for example, if we give our executives and our inside sales, our outside sales, and our sales managers access to this, all of these users are going to have access to those 4 documents that we've selected. So we'll click OK. And that'll update our access rights. And then you can see here it also updates the layouts. As you can see, there's 5 users or groups that have access to these specific layouts. And if we exit administration mode, you'll see only those layouts appear now. So this is a really easy way to simplify this deliver window and make any changes so that if you have layouts you're no longer using, or if maybe you have someone that's in your purchasing department and they don't even need to see the layout, so you're just trying to simplify it for them, you can actually hide everything from them. So a lot of flexibility there. So layouts, that's very simple. Literature, going to work pretty much the same way. You'll want to enter administration mode. That's probably the biggest kind of learning curve with this feature, just remembering to go into administration mode to make these changes and saying, okay, well, I want this support agreement, right click, set access rights, and this is the one that's used across the company, so I'm going to give everyone access, and then click OK, and you can do that. The same thing is true with if you don't want to give someone access rights. Maybe you say, you know what, we don't actually use this file anymore. I can go back in here, go to set access rights, and we'll just deselect all and click OK. And now you're going to see it's a 0, 0. And if we exit out of administration mode, that file no longer appears in our list. So you can remove a file completely from your list. It doesn't delete it, it's just not giving anyone access to view it or modify it without entering administration mode. So we talked about the literature, so we have our literature there. The cover page, it's going to be very similar, it's just slightly different. When you enter in administration mode, because it's a drop down on the cover page, what you're going to do is once they load here, we're actually going to click on the drop down window, and these you do have to do one at a time. So if I select my cover page, you're then going to click on this settings icon here, and that'll open up that access rights window. And again, I'm just going to give everyone access to that one and then click OK. But maybe I have another cover page, maybe this blue cover page here, and I want to give just to my executives, inside sales, outside sales, and sales managers, and click OK. They'll be the only ones that have access to that one. And then if we exit administration mode, you'll see here the drop downs are limited to do those 2. So, okay, so very easy to use. You can make as many of those adjustments. You can go back and forth. So if you have some that are if you are changing your layouts on a regular basis and you need to hide some and not hide others, you'll be able to do that, and you'll be able to specify that on a per user basis. So you're actually setting this access rights, these view and modify rights for each of your users in QuoteWorks, so you can really specify which ones are going to be important for each users. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. The next thing we want to cover is going to be the grid toolbar. So it's kind of similar here, but you'll see on my document items tab, I have all these icons. And if you're wondering, if you haven't upgraded to 5.6 yet, this has moved. So this was actually to the right over here. We moved it over here just to make things a little easier, make it a little more compact for you. So under the document items window here, or document items tab, you see a list of all the features, and yours might vary. If you don't have the real-time module, some of these features are not going to be available to you. But for those of you that do, yours is going to look very similar to mine. We can now control which of these features you have access to and which show up for which user. So to do that, it's going to be very, very simple. We're going to go into utilities. And you do have to have master rights to make these changes because you're editing the user settings. So just something to keep in mind. So utilities, user maintenance, and let's go ahead and we'll edit Brandon. So we'll edit myself here. Click edit and go to the menus tab. So again, just utilities, user maintenance, and then select the user you want to make the changes to. Click edit, and you'll see there's a grid toolbar menu option. And if you expand that, you'll see a list of all of the features available on this grid toolbar. So you can hide any of those that aren't important to you. So if you're not using the highlight functionality or the invert row selection, or maybe you don't use the add shipping rate line item information, or you don't include pictures, or whatever it is, you can go through these and you can hide them from the specific user. And it's as simple as unchecking the checkbox, and that'll no longer appear on their settings. So if we logged in as Brandon, we would not see the highlighter or the invert row selection. So these would actually move, and it would shorten this grid toolbar. So if there's any features in there that you don't want to view, if you don't want your reps to have access to, you can come in here and you can make those changes for those users. And again, it's a per user setting, so you can customize it the way you want. And it's just a nice little way to kind of only provide those features that are going to be useful for them. And then once you've made those changes, simply click OK, and that'll save those changes. If you want to hide all of them, you can just uncheck the grid toolbar checkbox here, and that'll actually hide all of those. So none of these will appear here. I use these all the time, so I'm going to leave those checked. But if there's any of those, you can go through and kind of uncheck the ones that aren't too important for you. You also might want to check in Chapter 4 of the QuoteWerks help file. We spell out which each of those features does with screenshots and kind of walk you through what they're used for. So you might want to see if there's anything in there that you're not using that could be useful. And if there is something that you're not using and you just don't want to show it anymore, you can hide it. And you can always go back. If you hit something, you realize you actually are using that feature, then you can always go back and add it. Very easy to do since it's just a checkbox. Okay, so let's go ahead and click OK there, and then we'll click close. So that's going to be a couple ways that you can specify changes for your users. That's going to be pretty simple. As far as re-exporting to QuickBooks or Sage 50 or ConnectWise or Autotask, whatever you're using, I'll show you where it is. It's going to be really easy to get access to it. But basically, if you go into your purchase orders tab in QuoteWorks and you right click, there'll be an option at the bottom of that menu to re-export that PO to whichever your accounting integration is, or your purchase order integration is set up in QuoteWorks. So we support QuickBooks, Sage 50 US edition only, and then Autotask and ConnectWise. So if you're using any of those 4 systems for purchasing and you're having QuoteWorks create the POs for you, you'll have this option. And all this is going to do is simply re-export it over to, in this case, QuickBooks. So maybe the original purchase order, the customer changed something, maybe an item was sold out by the time we got it into purchasing. Whatever the reason is, now you can actually just re-export it, and QuoteWorks will actually just update the number in its system. So if it's QuoteWorks, the PO number in QuoteWorks is, let's say it's 5, and you re-export it, it's just going to change it to 6. 5 no longer exists because 5 has now become 6. So It just updates that PO with those changes, and then you'll have that updated and new PO in your system. So again, very, very easy to use functionality for that. And one of the nice things about that feature is there is no setup. That feature just is available. It's on that right-click menu in your purchase orders tab. Okay, so now we're going to get into the utilize features. So this is a pretty big one for a lot of users. So if we click on our product link here, you'll see now. So when you log into QuoteWerks after you've updated, your utilize will probably look like this, where you'll have the little expand icon. So we'll go ahead and click on that, and that'll show you the My Favorites folder, which you already had. But now you'll see there's a public favorites and the workspace. So we'll talk about the public favorites first. This is where you can save items and share them with other users in your organization. So the My Favorites is specific to your logged in user in QuoteWerks. The public favorites is specific to your organization. So everyone can have access to that. And it's really easy to add items in there. So let's go ahead and just do a laptop. We'll go out and we'll find an item. And we'll just add probably the first item that we find here just for an example. So you find an item that you want to sell, and to add it to your, we'll say public favorites, you'll simply right click on it, and you'll see there's an option that says associate one selected item with an utilized favorites folder. So we'll go ahead and we'll select it, and it'll bring up the folder tree. In this case, I only have the two folders, the public and the My Favorites. So we would select public favorites, click OK, and you'll get a confirmation that it was added. And then we can check, just go to your public favorites, and you'll see it's been added. So very easy to do. You can multi-select as well. So if you are looking for multiple items, let's just say we're looking at keyboards, and if you wanted to add multiple keyboards at once, we'll just hold control on our keyboard. So just right click, or I'm sorry, hold control and just left click. And then once you've selected the amount of items you'd like to add to your favorites, right click, and you'll see it'll tell you you want to associate 3 selected utilized items with an utilized favorites folder. So we'll go ahead and say public favorites, click OK, and it'll add those items. And it may update the pricing too while you're adding them if you have that automatically checked. And then you'll receive your confirmation. And then if we go to public favorites, we'll actually see that those 3 items have been added to my public favorites folders. So everyone that logs into QuoteWerks in my installation, they'll now have access to these 4 items. Now, that could potentially be time consuming to kind of go through all those items when you're looking for a specific item type. So what we've done is we've now added folders and subfolders for your favorites. So you can actually come in here and start organizing them by like item type or services or whatever it is, or maybe even manufacturer. So if you simply right click and choose, we'll just say laptop, or we'll say Lenovo laptops. If I could type, click OK. And then you'll see the expansion here, the Lenovo laptop. And then if I want to, all I have to do is right click, associate one selected utilized item with an utilized favorites folder. And you'll see my new folder appears, and I can click OK. And it's now associated with that. And then if I click in that Lenovo laptop, that item now appears. So it makes it really easy to organize your items from utilize into various folders and subfolders. And you could do this for keyboards and monitors and workstations, warranty services, add-on items, however you're using utilize, you're going to have a lot of flexibility in using these folders and subfolders. So if I wanted to go a step further, if I wanted to go ahead and add a subfolder to the Lenovo laptop, I could do that. So maybe I want to say, it's a very specific laptop, it's a yoga. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then you'll see you can drill down and you can keep going. So you can actually create as many folders and subfolders as you wanted. If you wanted to add another kind of like main folder, we just go to our public favorites here and we'll wait for that to load, right click, and we would say, let's just say monitors, and then click OK. And you'll see there's one for monitors, and same thing if you wanted to say subfolder for maybe Dell, click OK, and that's where you would store your Dell monitors. So very easy to do and just gives you more flexibility. And the same is true with your My Favorites. If you wanted to set up various folders in your My Favorites, maybe you have a specific customer that you sell to specific items, or maybe there's a specific organization that only purchases specific items, so you have a list just for them. You create a folder for them, or you could organize it in categories or product types and things like that. It just provides more flexibility and gives you that option of kind of saving those items that you quote on a regular basis, so you're not having to go and search them each time. Especially when you get to the point where you know part numbers, you know exactly what you're looking for. You have to go to Utilize and find it, and then add it to your quote. Well, it's a lot easier if it's already here and you can just quickly add items and build out those items, and you're getting that refreshed product content and real-time pricing availability. So you'll have all that functionality. Okay, so the last thing on here is going to be the workspace. So the workspace is a little different. You'll see actually if we go to, well, we'll go to public favorites since I actually have some items in there. So you'll see when I select an item, and we'll just select this keyboard here, there's an option to add this item to the workspace. So the workspace, and let's just go ahead and do that. Let's add it to the workspace so we have something in there. So the workspace is kind of like that temporary holding area for your items. And we kind of talked about this during the slideshow where we're saying this is where you can store items that you are maybe researching, or maybe you're not sure exactly where they fit into your kind of like your folder structure. Maybe you aren't sure if you're going to continue to sell the item. You want to sell it a few times to see if customers are buying it. Whatever the reason is, it gives you just kind of another place to store items. Again, so you're not having to go and search for the items. It's a great place we see with a lot of customers where they actually store multiple items that they're researching, and they're basically just trying to look at the differences and prices and everything. And instead of having to load through the search and utilize each time, especially if they get distracted or they have a phone call come in or there's an email that needs their attention or they have to go to a meeting or whatever it is, they can actually come back here and see a list of those items that they're comparing. And then once they've just kind of narrowed it down, they can simply select the item. And again, you can go back to that add one selected item to an utilized folder, and you'll see the folders break down, and then they can assign it to a folder if they want to. If you don't, you can simply remove it from the workspace. That's what this little icon is. You can also right click, and there's an option to remove utilize product from the workspace, and that'll remove it from there. Now, if you remove it from the workspace, but you've associated it with one of these other folders, it'll remain in here until you've removed it. So you'd actually have to remove it in both places if it exists in both spots. So just something to keep in mind. And then same thing, if you want to remove something from Utilize, you can always just right click and you'll see there's an option for disassociating the selected Utilize item from this favorites folder. So again, very easy to use, very easy to organize. I would highly recommend only allowing your QuoteWerks administrator or the person who's familiar with kind of how QuoteWerks is set up to come in here and set up these folders, just so you don't have everyone kind of trying to add their own in there. But the My Favorites, obviously, everyone can do whatever they please. So that is nice that if you're not going to use the public favorites, you can at least organize your My Favorites folder in that way where you can use those folders and subfolders. Okay, just a couple more items to get through here. So let's go ahead and close out of here. So next thing we wanted to talk about was refreshing and syncing between QuoteWerks Web on the Links tab in the Deliver window. So again, this is going to be very, very straightforward. But before this, before we added this functionality, if you are in QuoteWerks Web, so if you're in QuoteWerks Web and you have this document here that you added in QuoteWorks Web, there wasn't an easy way to pull that into the links or into your QuoteWorks desktop file. So what you can do now is you can actually force a sync essentially. You can actually say, okay, let me just check for any files. And that's what this refresh icon will do. And you'll see you have the option to sync files up to QuoteWorks Web. So if you made any changes to things and you want to push that up to QuoteWorks Web, you can do that, or you can sync down to QuoteWorks desktop. And that will bring in, if any new files, which I hadn't added any, but if I had any added new files, will show up there. This is also really useful because we added it to the Deliver window. If you are in the Deliver window, because there's a lot of companies that have moved basically just to QuoteWorks Web, and they're just using QuoteWorks Desktop for the administrative purposes, if you make a change to a layout, maybe you have a new logo, change company colors, whatever it is, you can now sync directly from here as well. So again, this is useful. So if you've made a change to any of your layout files, or maybe there's a new literature document, whatever it is, instead of having to close out of here, go to Tools, Options, QuoteWerks Web Setup, and then synchronize and then sync up. We just kind of created a shortcut for you so you can quickly sync between the two without having to jump through multiple steps. So it should make things a lot easier when you're administering through QuoteWerks Desktop for your QuoteWerks web users, where you can just run that sync whenever you need to make changes or whenever you have made changes, and it'll update for them automatically. So again, nothing to set up. There's not much to it. If you have QuoteWerks Web, you can start using this immediately. So it should make things a lot easier whenever you make changes in the desktop. You can automatically have those pushed up very quickly to QuoteWerks Web. Okay, let's go back to our document items window here. So we want to talk about our grid toolbar and specifically the quote importer for Synnex. So like I said, if you have already set up, well, first you have to have the real-time module in QuoteWerks. But if you have that and you've already set up the integration between QuoteWerks and Synnex, this icon will appear on your grid toolbar automatically when you upgrade to version 5.6. And if you click on it, it's going to be very simple. You simply need to put in your Synnex quote number. So if you have a quote number or PO number from Synnex, you would simply put that in. Let me see if this one still works. Help if I spell it right. Okay, so that's my quote number from Synnex, and then I would simply click import, and it's going to pull that document directly into QuoteWerks from Synnex. You'll be able to set your pricing. If there's prices associated with it, you'll see the vendor's already been set for you. You can update it with Utilize now at this point because you have the vendor and the vendor part number. So you have all that functionality and you have all that information, and that's automatically going to be pulled directly into your installation. And you can do that with any of them. So as long as you have the quote number, you can easily pull that in. Like I said, there's going to be no setup. Now, if you are using Tech Data, you'll see here on my drop down, these first two have always been here, so you could always import the Tech Data Excel quote and also retrieve the Tech Data SAP quote. The Tech Data SAP quote would only allow you to import quotes from Tech Data that begin with the number 4. There's just is this very specific type of quote. Well, now you can also bring in the ones that with the number 1. You're going to select the option below it, and we put JSON in parentheses next to it just to make you aware that it is actually different. It's a completely different API from Tech Data that they wrote. This will allow you to import those types of quotes directly into QuoteWerks, but you do have to have some setup. So you'll see, like on mine, when you update, if you don't set it up, this is what you're going to see. So to set it up, it's going to be really, really easy. You're going to go to Tools, Options, and then you're going to click on your Real-Time tab, and then your Real-Time Setup, and then you want to click on your Tech Data tab, and you'll see here you have a Tech Data API JSON. And basically means this is, if you already have this set up, you'll just need to click Connect, and that'll connect you so that you can start pulling in those Tech Data SAP quotes with the numbers 4 or 1. You can actually use either or for that functionality. Now, for the CCW quotes, you actually need to link your Tech Data account with your CCW account. And there's a way to do that in Tech Data. If you go into the QuoteWerks help file, there's actually instructions on what you need to link. It's pretty straightforward, but it is a non-QuoteWerks setup. You actually have to go to your Tech Data account to set that up. Once you link that, then you'll be able to come down here, and then you'll be able to actually retrieve a Tech Data CCW quote or the Tech Data SAP quote, either one. So that functionality is available to you. You just need to make sure that you follow through with the setup beforehand. Okay, and then the last thing we wanted to talk about was going to be, actually, let me just make sure I covered everything on there on the setup. Yes, okay. Yep, so that looks good. So the last thing I wanted to mention was we added a zoom shortcut here. So if you'll notice here, the grid has been, we've been making some changes to when you select the items. So if like you click in the description, will bring up the grid window. For a lot of companies, we enable the double click, but some companies, they actually have that turned off. So to get into the zoom window, you would have to right click and just enter Zoom window. Well, there's now a shortcut for the Zoom description on the grid toolbar here. So when you're in the description, if you click on that, that'll bring up that Zoom window as well. So if you have that double click disabled, you can always use the shortcut on the grid toolbar instead of having to right click and then select the Zoom description. So just again, another little shortcut, but that's what that icon is here in the grid toolbar. So that's available as well. And again, if you're not using it, that's fine. You now have the option to hide it also. Okay, well, I think that's everything we wanted to cover today. I do see quite a few questions, so I'm going to start going ahead and going through those. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to post on the questions. I'll stick around here for the next couple minutes and go through those. If you don't have any questions, thank you for attending. We really appreciate it. If you want to see something in more detail, definitely let us know. We'd be happy to answer any questions for it. And we will be sending out this recording of the webinar, hopefully, if not this week, then very early next week, maybe like Monday, since we're already almost done with Wednesday here. So again, thank you everyone for attending. For those of you that have questions, just hang tight and we'll start going through those.